Hey, welcome back to Briefing with the Chief. I'm your host, Patrick Jordan, and we are here for another quick Chiefs brief. And I have to talk about the murder of Stephanie Minter in Fairfax, Virginia, because there's two things that I've been monitoring over the years: the Soros-funded or the progressive DA movement, and the sanctuary state or sanctuary city movement, and these two intersect, and I think are significantly responsible for the death of this 41-year-old mother. So Stephanie is here's a picture of Stephanie, and she was on May 1st. She was waiting at a bus stop, and when she was brutally murdered by an illegal immigrant, Abdul Jalloh. There he is, right there. He'd been in the country almost 20 years. There had been a order to deport him in from 2020. He'd been arrested over 30 times in the Fairfax, Virginia area. The Virginia DA, Steve Descano, received 3 warnings from law enforcement that something needs to be done about him because he's violent and he's getting more violent. And here's the headline for them: Police warned prosecutor 3 times about violent illegal immigrant before he allegedly killed the Virginia mother. I think I got a video that can bring you guys all up to speed on the case before I give you my thoughts.
Tonight, the community outcry is growing after an undocumented immigrant with a lengthy criminal history is accused of killing a Fredericksburg woman. 32-year-old Abdul Jalloh is facing a murder charge for the stabbing death of Stephanie Minter. It happened at a bus stop in the Hybla Valley section of Fairfax County last week. And this morning, Jalloh made his first court appearance since this incident, but it was for another crime. Our Matthew Torres was there and explains how, despite a laundry list of charges, Jalloh was still allowed to roam the streets.
It's at this Walmart on Richmond Highway in Hybla Valley where employee Ivan Atoya says a man tried to steal a 45-inch TV 2 months ago.
When we stopped him, he seemed pretty calm, pretty tame.
Atoya appeared in court to testify against the suspect, 32-year-old Abdul Jalloh. But that hearing was pushed back, giving Jalloh time to get a public defender and address new allegations that he stabbed and killed a woman named Stephanie Minter at a bus stop last week.
You kind of have to be careful. Because you don't really know what someone is capable of.
Jalloh frequented this Hybla Valley community, well known to both prosecutors and police.
Court records show Jalloh has a lengthy criminal history with more than 30 cases against him. Several of the charges were for malicious wounding, assault and battery, disorderly conduct, and even rape. Prosecutors dropped most of the cases.
Seeing someone that has a lot of charges on that is kind of scary.
A spokesperson for the Fairfax County Commonwealth's Attorney's Office says they were unable to prosecute those cases because victims could not be located or contacted despite police efforts to bring them to court.
This guy has 5 stabbings under his belt, a prior rape charge, and we're going to let him walk? It doesn't make any sense.
But Jalloh did have 1 felony conviction for malicious wounding in 2023. Jalloh was sentenced to 2 years with 5 years suspended, but was released 7 months later. Then he was arrested again and returned to court for violating probation. Jalloh had the chance of going back to prison to serve the rest of his suspended sentence, but court documents say the prosecution and defense struck a deal instead. The judge accepted that agreement and simply resuspended Jalloh and ended his probation, allowing him to walk away unsupervised.
Just outright disgusting that victims like Stephanie Minter shouldn't have been victims. You had tools in the toolbox, probation and parole revocation, and you didn't utilize them. So it is your fault.
The Department of Homeland Security says the Sierre Leone national came to the country illegally in 2012. ICE says it issued a detainer on him in 2020 and got an order of removal. Meanwhile, his defense for a bond hearing in 2023 says he was already in the States for nearly 20 years. Court documents also say he's been diagnosed with schizophrenia. Matthew Torres, WUSA 9.
So let's talk about the prosecutor. The very first thing he did is he failed to prosecute this guy on all these other stabbing cases. So let me give some clarity. As I was preparing for the show, there's additional information that came out that the district attorney's office failed to issue subpoenas for the victims in 3 of those cases. So those stabbing cases failed to issue subpoenas. What happens when the DA issues a subpoena either goes to some investigators that work for the DA's office or for the local police department. For me, they would just come back to the detective handling the case, and I'd go find the victim and I'd bring them to court for the preliminary hearing. In this case, this reporter indicated after looking through these criminal files that no subpoenas were ever filed, which indicates to me that this has less to do with unable to find the victims and more to do with an issue that I'm going to bring up in a minute here regarding Steve Descano. But let me tell you who he is. Now, he ran for district attorney in 2019, and he's received over $1 million in funding from George Soros or George Soros-backed political action committees. Now, these Soros-funded DAs, if you've been listening to me for the last couple of years, I've talked about it. They have certain things that they universally do, and one of them is they refuse to file charges against illegal immigrants when it might injure or it might hurt them in terms of immigration court, meaning it might create liabilities for them and their immigration status. That was something that was announced by the former Soros-funded DA here in LA County. It's something that Steve Descano believes in. In fact, we have an article from the American Enterprise Institute who labels Descano, here he is, Steve Descano, America's worst prosecutor. And in the body of this article, they talk about him stating that he would handle cases involving immigrants differently so as to not bring them in conflict with ICE or DHS or risk their immigration status. So the question here is, did he fail to file those subpoenas because he's protecting this immigrant? Or did he fail to file these subpoenas because he's incompetent? Or did he fail to supply these subpoenas because he doesn't believe in prosecutions? All of those are possibilities for Steve Descano, and that's the problem. That's the problem. When he says, I couldn't find the victims, and there's evidence to show he didn't even try. He didn't issue subpoenas. Was it because he couldn't find the victims, or because he didn't want to issue the subpoenas? This is the problem I have with and these Soros-funded prosecutors, these progressive prosecutors, are using these little gray areas in the procedures to keep people from going to jail, keep people from going to prison, because that's their biggest mandate, is to reduce jail population, force things to be handled in the community, even if it causes increased crime and disorder in your communities. Now, in this particular case, now, as you heard in the report, though, the guy's on summary probation, which means the DA could say, oh, no, this guy's a danger. We're going to revoke his probation. He's going to go to prison. Instead, we have a prosecutor's office that wants to make a deal to get people out. That's what these progressive prosecutors do. They did it in Cook County, Illinois, until they got rid of Kim Foxx. They're still doing it in Philadelphia with Larry Krasner. They're still doing it down in San Antonio, Texas, with Jose Garza. They're still doing it up in Santa Clara County with Bexton up there. So this is still going on in many jurisdictions in the country, and Steve Descano is one of those stars in that movement. So the question is, did he make the right decision to keep the community safe, or did he make the decision to keep the guy out of prison? It looks more like he made the decision to keep the guy out of prison. Now, one of the things I haven't told you that is even more important is the local police, the Fairfax police, sent 3 different communications to him, 3 different written communications to the office, the district attorney's office, saying that this guy was a threat, and still they ignored that threat. But there's something else going on here too. Now, both Descano and the sheriff, it's Stacey Kincaid for Fairfax County, refuses to work with ICE. So all the time that this guy's been in custody and they had detainers on him, they could have just turned him over to ICE, but they refused to work with ICE. Because if you have a detainer, used to be in LA County, when we had a detainer on somebody that wanted by ICE, we would hold them and ICE would come and get them. Then we stopped working with ICE in 2020 because suddenly there were constitutional issues. There are no constitutional issues. This has been vetted by the courts. Recently, a Supreme Court ruling indicated no, immigration courts have jurisdiction over federal courts. But what Fairfax County, the sheriff, and the DA are doing is they're saying, no, we're not going to cooperate at all. We're not even going to give them information. We're not going to respect their immigration detainers, which are lawful and come out of immigration courts. These are Article 2 courts. These are administrative courts. These were set up by these are authorized by the Constitution. You don't need judicial rulings from the federal judiciary on this, and that's what the Supreme Court said recently. And that brings up another issue here. This is the issue of sanctuary cities, sanctuary states. We have a governor in Virginia. She ran on a moderate platform, strong on crime, or she's going to keep the community safe. She's going to put people in jail. She's going to arrest people. So she ran as a moderate, but as soon as she got into office, she signed a bill authorizing sanctuary status for immigrants, meaning that they would not work with ICE at all, even on this case, because immediately after the suspect was arrested, ICE put a detainer on him. And Spanberger, Abigail Spanberger, the New Virginia governor, refuses to honor that. Now we got a video to explain the fallacy or the hypocrisy or the lies of her position. Let's roll with that video.
Tonight, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and ICE are blasting Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger for saying ICE should get a judicial warrant if they want to arrest an illegal immigrant who is now charged with murdering a woman at a Fairfax County bus stop.
Today, DHS posted on X to say that Spanberger is fighting to protect a murderer instead of American citizens. Our Nick Minock has been following this story from the very beginning. Nick, what does the law say about this? Does ICE need a judicial warrant?
Yeah, ICE says they do not need a judicial warrant to make an immigration arrest. And the experts I've spoken to today tend to agree with ICE on this. Now, the governor does not define what she means by a signed judicial warrant. Typically, what this is a signed order from a judge to search or arrest a suspect. And Fairfax County Sheriff Stacey Kincaid has this policy that tells ICE if you want someone in her jail who is in the country illegally, you better go get one. And the governor tonight is backing up the sheriff's position. Now, I spoke with a former federal prosecutor and former Fairfax County prosecutor who served as the ICE acting director some time ago about this. Here's what he had to say about it. The governor says that ICE should get a judicial warrant if they want this guy. To some people, a judicial warrant might sound like a reasonable request. Is it?
That's what I think her tactic is, to say something that sounds reasonable, but it's inherently not reasonable and certainly not necessary. Under the law, immigration enforcement is under the executive branch, and the law is very clear, and it's been upheld by court, that these warrants issued by ICE are more than sufficient to arrest somebody, and there's really no reason or even a mechanism to go to a judicial, to an Article 3 judge and ask for a warrant. In fact, if you were to go to one and ask for a warrant, they would probably go apoplectic and wonder why you're in their courtroom, for something that has no business in their court. But again, it's a sleight of hand to deceive the voters and make it seem like she's somehow supportive of deporting criminals, when in fact her real strategy seems to be keeping criminal illegals in the community rather than having them deported.
All right, so in short, Jonathan Fahey says Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger is requesting something, a judicial warrant that doesn't exist. Reporting live in Springfield, Nick Minock, 7 News.
Nick, thank you.
Well, that prosecutor was generous, called it a sleight of hand. I call it lies. I call it manipulation. I call it gaslighting. What she's using is your ignorance of the law to suggest that ICE is not following the law and they have one more step to do to get a judicial warrant to be able to take somebody out of the Fairfax County jails. That's simply not true. As that judge explained, there's no way for ICE to get a judicial warrant from a federal court on state charges, nor is there any way for federal officers to go to a state court to get a judicial order to take custody for a federal charge. So the sleight of hand is actually a lie, a misrepresentation, a gaslight of the voters to pretend like she's actually serious about crime and want to do something crime, just as this prosecutor said, when in reality, she really doesn't want to do anything. She owes her governorship to the left who supported her governorship, and so she's willing to lie to you, and she's willing to make your communities less safe to appease the people who funded her campaign. That's it for today for this Chief's brief, and we'll see you next time on Briefing with the Chief. Amanda, you can take it away.